This week we're gonna build and frame out this entire 24 by 22 detached garage, and then we're gonna hire out the siding and the roof. We're gonna share a bunch of tips and tricks along the way, and of course at the end of the video we'll break down the entire project cost. All right, come on, get in here for the intro. We gotta do it, Right. This is my dad. Me and him are gonna knock out together, have some fun with it. Really? Really? Let's get this thing laid out and square it up. Let's do it. Well, we tried. We just started laughing on that intro and could not stop, so we just got to work. We started by laying the square out for our building, measuring diagonal corner to corner to make sure it was perfectly square, and then popped a few chalk lines to keep our footprint on the ground. Let's pull a line from the back of the slab to this front chalk line. Make sure we're square. Just a double check. You know what I mean? So this video is going to span over 4 weeks, and with all the other trades showing up to get this garage done, my focus was really on timing and getting it finished and share the cost with you guys. Hopefully in the end you will be shocked about how little this garage actually cost. So first thing we did is lay out our top and bottom plate, and we marked our 16s all the way down. And then we'll flip these up, separate them, and then start laying all the studs on our brake lines. And then we'll lay our window out, because there's gonna be one window on this first wall we're putting up. Now, to most of your professional tradesmen, a lot of this information shared in this video is going to be pretty basic, but the inspiration behind my channel is to encourage and inspire everyone that anybody can do this with a little bit of encouragement, dedication, and research. As you can tell so far, we're building all of our walls directly on the ground, laying out all the studs. We're going to lay out the OSB, everything, do the complete wall, laying down, and then stand it up into position, and we're going to do that 4 times. So we got the wall pretty much roughly framed on the ground right here. Now we're setting our window. This is pretty easy. You get your rough opening for your window. It pretty much says on the package exactly what you need to be for the square. So that's what we did. Ours is 36 by 36. So we made a header. So we have one 2x6 sandwiching a strip of 7/16 OSB. We're gonna sandwich that together with some framing nails, set that at the right height, and then the top and bottom cripples, we'll just go off measurements and pop those in there. So right now our header is sitting in between 2 king studs. What I'm cutting now are called the jack studs. They will actually sit below the rough seal and transfer the weight from the bottom of the window down to the floor. And then the cripples will drop in on 16 on center, just like the wall studs. Now the wall is completely framed. Now we're going to sheet it. This is pretty simple. We're using 4x8 7/16 OSB. I'm going to run them horizontal. I'm not going to worry about the window opening now. I'll cut that later. And then these black lines you see here will follow my stud locations on 16s, and I'll lay a nail every 6 to 8 inches. Well, luckily we have a front loader tractor. We're going to try and grab this strap right here and lift the thing up, get it wedged up, and it'll stay while we do the other 3. Now this first wall took us a little bit to get warmed up and really figure out exactly the best way to lift this thing with the bucket, because the tractor was almost at max height, but once we figured it out, it went perfect and was so much easier than lifting it by hand. Now this second wall is going to get laid out the exact same way. And we're running a 8-foot wall, so that means we ordered actual 8-foot wall studs, which are 92 5/8 inches long. So we didn't have to cut a single wall stud. The green painted ends kind of declares that those are 92 5/8. It is definitely worth your time to do a little prior research on your building height and use some pre-cut studs. So that was day 1, guys. We got the 2 24-foot 3 walls up. Pretty excited about how that went out. There was definitely a couple hiccups. Learned a lot. I did the California corners on these ends. So that's when you need 90 a 2x4. That way when your butt wall butts up here, you still got some sheetrock or some interior edge to attach your finishes to. Windows, you can see right there. We did the 2x6 headers on those. crippled them out, king stud, all the correct stuff. It was a pretty fun day. Me and my dad got some kicks. So we're gonna leave this wall down on the ground today, come back in the morning, stand this wall up behind me here, and then get the 2 end walls done, and hopefully we'll have a box tomorrow. Second work day, guys, and that wall went up so much easier than the first one. Right here I'm showing you a close-up of how I mark my studs on each side. I used to just do one center line on 16 and then lay everything to the right, but really that's not correct. This is a much better way to do it. I'm marking the top plate and the bottom plate at the same time with a line on each side. I can make sure that each stud is perfectly 90 degrees to the top and bottom plates. And everything lined up perfectly down this wall. So now our base plates, we have them marked on the concrete. So we're gonna make sure those are squared up perfectly on these 2 back corners. And then we'll start pulling measurements on the top before we tie in our top wall plate, because that top wall plate is gonna span on the through walls, and that way it'll capture it and tie all the walls together. But like I said, before we do that, we're gonna hit all the measurements and make sure we're square, but we're looking pretty good right now. So right here, you can see our pre-drilled holes in our bottom plate. We're gonna run some 5-inch pin anchors. These worked out really well. You pre-drill a hole to the right depth, drop the pin in there, hammer the anchor down. It spreads out the bolt inside the concrete, and then you just tighten the nut on top. They worked out great, super easy. I ran these on the base plates every 24 inches into the concrete.
Pretty much took all the pins.
So we know the bottom seal is square. The last wall we have is our garage door wall. So we're using a 2x10, double 2x10s for the header on that. So this is pretty much gonna be like a split wall. It's gonna be 12-foot opening, almost 5 feet on each side. So it should be a little bit easier to raise. So we're gonna get all these cut up and pinned out, and then we'll get it raised. The garage door header is gonna be a double 2x10 with a sandwich strip of 7/16 OSB in the center. That just creates the correct width so it matches the wall and everything lines up good with your sheeting. Now we stand it up with the tractor, make sure it's square, and pin it down, and the box is complete. All right, guys, next up is gonna be the fun part, framing the roof. The first thing I'm gonna do is mark my centers on the front and back walls. If you're still here watching, I appreciate you hanging out. Your eyes are not lying. That is a wild turkey standing on the garage header. Him and my dad are like best buds. He named him Turk. He's been hanging out for a couple of years, and he pretty much just walks around like a guard dog. It's kind of crazy. To get the roof started, first thing I'm going to do is cut some ridge beam supports. These are going to stand right in the center on the front and back wall, and then hold our ridge beam to height. Next up is going to be getting our ridge beam marked out. We're going to lay this out on 16 the same way we set up the walls, mark a line on the front and back, and then that way our rafters will line up perfectly when we get it up in the air. I like making these ridge beam holders. It's super easy to get it raised up there and drop it into place, and then it just holds it on its own. Once you get your rafters up there, it works out perfect. And then depending on how you're going to frame out your gable ends, you can either leave it or knock it down. And we're just going to repeat ourselves on the garage door wall. Now the ridge beam is ready to set in place, and let's start cutting some rafters. Now we're getting all our 2x6s stacked up to start cutting our rafters. If you've never cut rafters before, it can be kind of daunting at first, but with a little bit of practice, it's not too hard. There's several different ways you can go about doing this. The first way is pretty easy. There is a ton of apps out there on your phone that you can download, type in all your measurements, and it'll tell you the exact length to cut them. The tried and true way is to get out your pen and paper and do a little bit of math work and use the Pythagorean theorem. The method I use is from Training Hands YouTube channel. He breaks it down really well, better than I ever could, so I'm going to put a link to that video in my description below. If you're interested, go over there and check it out. It makes it super easy. After hanging a couple rafters, our walls got out of plumb, so I used a technique from Matt Bangs Wood on YouTube, and I pulled a string from the front to the back of the wall. I offset it on the nail 1 inch, and then went up and down the wall, and you could easily see where it was out of plumb. Once the walls were back in plumb, we nailed off the rafters to the top of the wall plates and locked them down and continued hanging the rest of the rafters. Everything is falling into place perfectly. The string on the walls was huge. You know, like I said, I pulled that across the whole wall, set it off 1 inch on each ends, adjusted the wall all the way down in and out as needed, and then my rafters were all pre-cut. I had a little variation in the bird mouth up top there on the wall. At first, a little variation, but after I pulled that string, adjusted that top wall, all the bird mouth gaps lined up perfect. So I have like 6 more rafters to go, and you know, we're tying them in with the rafter ties up there that really sturdied the wall up. And right now we're just framing up the gable ends on the back and the front, and then we are almost done. The last thing we have left to do is to finish hanging all the OSB. Let's go ahead and break down the cost up to this point while we finish it off. So far to this point, our total investment for framing materials is right at $1,200. Now keep in mind, we are hiring out the rest of the trades from here, so that price is going to go up pretty quick. The tradesmen that I'm using to finish out the garage, they're all self-employed. You can get those by contacts with builders or just stopping by new development neighborhoods and asking if anybody does side work. You know, hitting the ground running, getting some good contact numbers, and cutting out the middleman will save you a ton of money. That's what I'm doing here with the paint, the roof, and the siding. And the next day, our siding crew showed up to get their job done. Now, their job is going to include wrapping the house, flashing the windows, installing the windows, doing the soffits, and then doing the hardy plank board and batten. And right here, they're framing out the rafter tails for some tongue and groove soffits. Here's a quick view of the window installed on the back side with the flashing tape and the wrap. You always want your flashing tape to overlap itself. You never want any open spots where the rain can run in. And then on the very top right here, you want your wrap to stay open just like this. That way it will not let the water go behind the window. Day 2 of the siding install, and of course we got rained out because the weather has been crazy, but I wanted to walk you guys around now that I have the chance and give you a little rundown on exactly what we're doing. As you can see behind me, we're going with board and batten hardy plank. It's a James Hardy product, and then we have our batten strips right here. These are 1x2s. These are laying every 16. So these 4x8 sheets, every time it breaks, you will have one of these batten strips or trim pieces covering it up. So ours, obviously it falls on 16, so we're covering it up every 16 as it goes. And then on top as well, we are trimming out the top with a 1x2, and we're pretty much taking the 1x2s and using it as all the trim. Your options are really endless. You can go 1x4s or 1x3s. As you can see, like I said, we did the 1x2s around the windows, and then the only place where we stepped it up in size was around the garage door. Now, sometimes if you want it to really look fancy, and it doesn't cost that much more to do this, you can do like 1x4s or 1x5s on your corners. And then you can even do a base plate. So for our lower transition, we just ran our batten strips straight down to the ground, as you can see. But if you want to spend extra money, you can do like a 1x6 down there to start your batten strips, then also end them. It really looks good, but it does kind of add up quickly with this James Hardy product because it is pricey. So on our garage door opening, we used 1x3, so we did step it up right there, and you can kind of see that look. There is a difference. Looks nice. And then our transition on the top of our 8-foot. So these are 8-foot walls. The 4x8 Hardy boards, they stop right there. So we'll cover it up with a 1x2 That way it hides that transition a little more. And then one thing you always want to check for, you always want to make sure that anytime you have a break on your siding on the hardy plank, that they put a drip edge over it. This right here is a drip edge, so when the water comes down, it just makes sure the water goes out and over. Always make sure they add that drip edge. So that is pretty much it, the basic on the siding. We're using 1x6 on the fascia board right there, you can see. So the siding, guys, it was included in their price as well. And then underneath, they're setting all tongue and groove. Now, I did spend all that time cutting the bird mouth and the rafters, because the original plan was to have them exposed and just paint them all with a metal roof. But last minute, my dad decided he wanted tongue and groove. So as you can see, we now have tongue and groove for our soffits. So we definitely weren't on the same page with that from the beginning, because otherwise I wouldn't have spent all that time cutting the rafters. But anyway, it looks good. The tongue and groove looks great. It is, you know, a little bit costly compared to the hardy soffit that they make, but his choice, his garage. He's flipping the bill for the materials. I'm just paying it forward and helping him with the labor. So yeah, everything's going good. They should finish up tomorrow. We'll get those guys paid. Of course, at the end of the video, I'll share all these prices with you guys and let you know how much we spent on this garage completely. Hopefully the metal roof guys will be not far behind them, and we'll get a roof on this thing and go from there. All right, see you guys in a couple days. So 4 weeks ago, we started building this detached garage. It is now finished. It came out awesome, and we saved a ton of money. We framed up the entire thing ourselves, and we hired out 3 trades to come in behind us and finish it off. On top of saving money by framing it ourselves, we also saved a ton by sourcing all the material ourselves for each trade. Now let's go over each one of those trades in detail, and I'll break down the cost for the material and labor. And at the end, we'll total it up and I'll tell you what we spent for the entire garage build. So this is the finished product minus the garage door. So for the total material cost on the siding, it was $3,500 with a total labor cost of $2,500. That included everything from the house wrap to the hardy plank. So that was a total investment of $6,000. Next up was the roof. We went with a ribbed galvalume panel and all the flashing enclosures to tie it off. This was a total cost of $3,800. Last but not least, we have the paint. This was a total cost of $1,700, bringing this total garage build to $12,700.